What is up, beautiful people of the internet? My name is Roland, welcome back to Still Fun, and today we're going to be talking about 5 things I love and hate about Elden Ring. Now, as a disclaimer, I'll say that this is one of the first Souls games that I've actually dived deep into. I've tried previously playing Dark Souls 1 a little bit, but eventually fell off because I had other things going on. And more recently, last year I played Neo, which was quite fun, but I had to put the game off because I was quite busy, and I feel like the FromSoftware games are like very time consuming, so sometimes it's just not optimal if you're a busy person. As always, we're gonna start with the bad bits because I want to end on a high note, because at the end of the day this is a fantastic game. Now that being said, it's not without its flaws, so let's go ahead and see what are these flaws. First off, we're gonna talk about the elephant in the room, that is the technical difficulties. Now, a lot of people have been complaining about the performance of the game. Personally, and keep in mind, I've only played the game in offline mode and I disabled the anti-cheat because I just figured that that's the best way to play this game, especially considering that it has some technical difficulties. And also, I'm not really interested in the multiplayer aspect, as I consider this game a game that should be experienced in solitude, you know? I think that's the best way to put it. Whatever the case might be, the game has some technical difficulties. On my end, I have a RX 6800 XT GPU and I have 32 GB of RAM, so it's a well above average computer. And strictly performance wise, I've only experienced in the beginning, not so much now after the game was patched. I mean, it was launched like 3 weeks ago, but in the beginning I experienced some stuttering when entering certain areas, but it was never game breaking, as you could like when the starting would start, you could just run a little bit around and then the starting would stop and then you can fight your opponent, right? So it was never something that would deeply hinder my experience. Now whether that is because I was playing on an offline mode or not, or because I was disabling the anti-cheat, I don't know, but that's how it was for me. Now, on the other hand, there were some very tricky stuff that was going on. For some reason, sometimes my monitor would just go full black. I would hear the gameplay, the game would still go on in the background, but it would just go full black, and this happened a couple of times, not too often, but it happened once while I was fighting a stronger opponent and I just died, so I had pythons on my neck instead of veins because of the anger that I was feeling. Now luckily that didn't happen too much, so I don't feel like that's a big problem, but it did happen. Also, if I would like alt tab out of the game into window mode to check out something and then I would go back into the game, sometimes the game would just go bonkers, where it would alt tab by itself, the monitor would go black, then it would go back into the game, and this process would repeat in a loop until I would just leave the game and then start it all over again, which was extremely annoying. Now, all that being said, for me personally, it wasn't as bad as for some other peoples that I saw that were complaining about things. It was fairly acceptable though, and now after the patches have been pushed out, it's even better, so I very rarely experience stuttering, and none of the other issues came up. Up next on our shit list is gonna be the FPS lock. So the game, like all FromSoftware games, is locked at 60 FPS on the PC. Now listen, I don't want to go into the debacle with console players saying that you don't need more than 60 frames, blah 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 blah. Everybody knows, everybody that played a computer video game ever in their life knows that 60 FPS on a PC or 100 FPS on a PC feels very, very different. The gameplay is much smoother when you have higher frames. Although, yes, your eyes cannot detect whatever, 24 frames per second. So, I don't know why they do this, especially because, like, on the day of the launch or on the second day of the launch, there was already a mod out that you could use to unlock your FPS. So why are they so hardcore about locking their FPS in this game, especially because it's not, from what I understand, it's not tied to how the game engine works, and it won't mess up your gameplay or the cutscenes or whatever. It won't mess up anything. It's just a pure decision that they made because, I don't know, they really they don't have a rich history of caring too much about PC players, let's put it that way. Okay, let's move on to the third point, and I'm gonna put in 3 little things here because these are nitpicks of mine that don't deserve a whole point, so I'm just gonna put them all in here. First off, I'm gonna talk about the UI. I feel like it's a little bit bloated. I'm talking specifically, so like the thing that bothers me the most is that, for example, you cannot compare your weapons. So in order to see if a weapon that you want to use is better than you already have, or when you are upgrading upgrading your weapon or stuff like that, you just can't compare. So you have to go in the menu, check the stats, get out of the menu, go back to the seller, whatever, check the stats again, and it's just such a poor decision, and like in modern gaming that shouldn't be the case. Also, next one, we're gonna still sit here on the point number 3, and that's the inability to pause the game while you're in it, or while maybe you are in a combat, or just like if you were just exploring the map and somebody decides to follow you, you can't pause the game. I feel like the inability to pause the game is a giant pain in the back, at least for me, because sometimes like I have limited time to play the game, right? Most of the times I'm gonna play it in the weekend. And while I play it, you know, this is the type of game that you need your full focus on. And my wife just walks in and like she asks me a random question, so I can't pause the game while I'm fighting. So, so then I end up dying, and then I end up pissing off my wife because I come off as a dickhead to her, which is not optimal. Or even if I don't come off as a dickhead to her and I answer her question properly, I lose focus on the game, and then you know what happens. You died. And last but not least, still at this point, I want to talk about the camera. The camera can be very annoying at times, and no, that's not part of the game. No, I mean, it is part of the game, but it's not meant to be part of the gameplay. It doesn't make the game more hard, and I mean, it does make the game more hard, but not in a good way, not in a way that the developers intended it, in my humble opinion. Like, especially when you're fighting flying enemies, the vultures or the bats, for example, it's... oh man, it can just be such a hassle. Okay, up next, I want to talk about the AI a little bit, because I feel like, I know this is the standard thing to do in a FromSoftware game, but when, for example, when you go and take out the guard, like you have two guards, right? One is stationary, the other one is circling around. You obviously take out the one that's stationary, maybe you do a silent kill on him, and then the other guard just walks past his body and doesn't react. And then you also had, like, I had this crazy situations in one of the first area filled with enemies when you start the game. And then you have some guard dogs also mixed in with the guards, and I literally took out the dog from behind while he was sitting less than 1 meter to the soldier, and the soldier just didn't react. It's like, oh, I didn't see you in front of my eyes, I don't care. I'm like, what is this? Like, at times, as good as the boss fights can be, and mini boss fights and stuff and so on and so forth, like the enemies in general can be, like sometimes I expect more, and for some reason not a lot of people are talking about this because they're all just sucked up in being hardcore fans, most of the people that play it. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of it. I think it would be, I mean, don't get me wrong, the game is already difficult enough at times, but just stuff like this makes it look a little bit unpolished is a strong word, but there is a little bit lack of attention to details, if you ask me. Okay, and the last bit on our things that we don't like about this game is the lock-on mechanism. Yes, the mechanism that is universally used in FromSoftware games, I just straight out hate it. I feel like it might be because also the game is more focused towards a console crowd, or at least it was in the beginning, because we all remember how bad the PC port for Dark Souls 1 was. And why it's annoying? It's just because, like, I feel like you should be able to play this game without needing to lock on enemies. That should be an option for players that want to do that, to be more precise about what they're doing. But me not being able to hit an enemy that's 2 meters in front of me just because I hit 5 centimeters to the left, instead of hitting him spot on, and it just makes you look like an idiot when you do that. And also, in my opinion, it's not necessarily because you're a bad player or anything, but it's just the mechanism of the game and the way the game is built. I'm not a big fan of. In general, I'm not a big fan of lock-on mechanisms, especially, for example, if you are fighting a boss. Sometimes the lock-on just disables, so you're just looking around, you're just fighting, and then it just disables, and then you try to find him with that camera, but sometimes it can be such a pain on the butt to relock, and if the enemy is right behind you, then you often are going to die. Okay then, let's continue with the beautiful points of this game, and the points that, in my opinion, make this game a very, very good game. Obviously, the first point is gonna be the open world. Now, up until this point, I honestly, when I would open up a new game, whether it was an older game I would play or a newer one that just came out, I didn't really care if it was a linear experience or it was open world. I just cared about the quality of the game, right? Well, Elden Ring opened my eyes as to how good an open world game can be when when it's done right. The excitement that you feel when you explore this world is just fantastic. It's a cautious, how do I say this? A cautious excitement, because you know that at any point in time something could just come and just whip your head off. And I think that's also what makes the open world aspect of this game so good, is that you are excited of exploring it, you are excited to see what's beyond the mountains or whatever, but at the same time you are very aware of the fact that it can be extremely dangerous for you and your souls, or whatever the currency is in the game. You know what I mean. So that being said, this has to be the best games that I've played when it comes to its open world. Also, the open world of the game will take me to my next point, where the progression in the game is so satisfying, because up until this point we were used in the Soul game, right? In a Souls game, FromSoftware game, to just have to grind, to have to find weakness in the opponents, and to just hit your head against the wall time and time again until you finally figure out how to beat your enemy, right? Or you just look up a tutorial on YouTube, whatever the case may be. Here you have the option of going outside of whatever your boss fight is next, and to just grind a little bit and make your character stronger, and then the next time when you come back to that opponent that was just beating you down, you can talk again, you know? You can show up stronger, better equipped, and just be ready to face him. That's something that we didn't have in the past, and at the same time I think that's what will keep players playing and will not turn down people from playing the game if they meet an opponent that's just too strong for them. A little asterisk of what I've just talked about, the grinding part is not as displeasing as one might think, because you have a great variety of opponents that you can take down when you're grinding, so it's not gonna keep you bored, or it's not gonna be just a dreadful experience. It's gonna be a fun one. Linking to the previous point of what I personally like a lot about this game is the non-linear nature. So up until this is the first open world game from FromSoftware, right? And it's just so much better, in my humble opinion, than the previous games were, for me personally, obviously, right? And I'm not a hardcore player of these games, so keep that in mind when I talk about my opinion. But I really like the fact that at any time and point when I would just feel like really stuck in a situation, you know what, I can just always, maybe if I have, like, let's put it this way, I have a very tough opponent that I just can't figure out, right? And I have, I don't know, 1 hour before I go to work, so I am able to play the game for like 1 hour, but I want to enjoy doing something else than just beating my head into the wall. And that's where the non-linear aspect of this game comes in and helps you. You can always, for example, go out and search for items that can make you stronger, that can give you more health, that can give you more flasks, yeah, health flasks, or what they are called. You can always grind a little bit to have a higher level next time you go and face the opponent, and there's always little things that you can do in order to somewhat relax from the main story, and that is so nice to have in this game. And that will keep me playing this game for many hours. Number 4 on the happy list is gonna be the minimalistic music. I really like how they implemented the music in this game, because it's not very prominent, but it does a very good job in adding tension when the game needs to add tension. So I think it's really well crafted, and it just goes very well with the game, with the setting of the game, with the view of the open map sometimes. I just really dig the music and the job that it's doing overall for the gaming experience. Now, the last point that I want to talk about, I think, is one of the more important ones, and I think that this game is gonna be a great entry for somebody that looks to get into this genre but was always a little bit turned off or intimidated by it. Me personally, I was never really intimidated by it, I just didn't, how do I say this, like, sometimes when you play a video game you don't want to be fully focused and on hardcore mode every single time you play that game, right? And I feel like some of the previous entrances requested your full attention and focus in order to make progression in it. But I think this game will act as a great entry for the whole FromSoftware catalog of games for new players. I think it does a great job in allowing you to trick the system, so to say, when you hit a wall, like I previously mentioned, by grinding, by getting stronger, getting better items or equipment. So it's gonna be a little bit easier I would say. But then, whoever really enjoys this game, is gonna have no problem in jumping into the other games where it's a more focused game, a more linear game, but it's gonna offer the same challenges and satisfaction as you progress in the game, and I think that's very important. But I also hope that FromSoftware will keep on making games such as Elden Ring, because man, the open world is just so good. Okay guys, that's gonna be it for this video. This went on way longer than I expected, but it is what it is. I wanted to speak my mind. Take care of yourselves. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you found something to your enjoyment here, or something that helped you out. If that's the case, feel free to leave me some feedback in the form of a comment or a like or dislike or whatever you want, you know. Any opinion is welcomed, and also I am very grateful for any constructive criticism regarding this type of video. Until next time, stay safe, stay clean, and stay strong.